Hi, I'm Professor Hopper. Come on into my classroom. Number one, you are who you are because of your inheritance, your genetics. Number two, when I say your inheritance and your genetics, what I mean is that DNA double helix. It stores all the code necessary to make all the proteins your body needs. Proteins like muscle. You know muscle. Never touch a lab floor. Contract. Relax. And the proteins in this spider's web that allow it to be suspended in midair. And the protein in your skin that gives your skin its innate toughness, and the melanin produced there that gives your skin its coloration. But not just your skin, because you see, eye color also is based off of the proteins that your body manufactures, which is based off of the genes that you have. Genes that are found on your chromosomes. And you know what chromosomes are. It's those things found in the nucleus of your cells that we have 23 pair of. The last pairing being sex chromosomes, as you see here. A diploid number, 23 pair. That will be 23 from mom and 23 from dad. When we're dealing with chromosomes like this, we would call this a locus, a place on a chromosome where genes are found. And just for sake of argument, let's pretend this is a gene for eye color. But just so we're clear, eye color is a polygenic trait. There are lots and lots of alleles all over your genome that determine your eye color. But let's pretend there are only two. A gene for blue eyes and a gene for brown eyes. So here we go. What we would have is a couple of chromosomes, all right? Just a couple of chromosomes. And on those chromosomes, one from mom, one from dad, we're going to pretend this one's from mom and this one came from your dad. And on each of these chromosomes, you would find at the same locus, the same location on those chromosomes, a gene for eye color. Something like this. You could get a variety of eye color genes from mom and dad. We're going to pretend that this is incredibly simple. We're going to say that you could get a gene for blue eye color, or alternatively, you could get a gene for brown eye color. You see, eye color, to have brown eyes, to have blue eyes, this is what we call a phenotype. Your phenotype is the expression of your genes or your genotype. Your genotype would indicate here that you got a gene for blue eye color from your mom and a gene for brown eye color from your dad. Your genotype is displayed here. It would manifest itself in you as a phenotype. But what phenotype? What would your eye color be? And the way we would typically explain this is we would say that a blue eye color gene is quite recessive. It's a recessive trait. So we would dictate this with a little b. A little b. Whereas brown eyes is a dominant trait. So we would dictate this with a big B. This individual would have a genotype that would look like this. Big B, little b. That is their genotype. That would give rise to their phenotype. And their phenotype would be that they have dominant brown eye gene, recessive blue eye gene. They would have brown eyes because your dominant gene would mask the recessive trait. An important note to make about this particular individual is that we would call this person heterozygous. Hetero means different. They are heterozygous because they have two different alleles represented in their genotype. Two different alleles. One dominant gene for brown eyes, one recessive gene for blue eyes. They are heterozygous. But what if this person were to have offspring with another individual, and this individual happened to have two little b's represented in their genotype? Again, genotype. What if this person has two recessive traits, both of which dictate blue eyes? This individual is heterozygous. They're heterozygous. They have different traits. One big B for brown eyes, one little b for blue eyes. This person's phenotype is they have brown eyes. But here we have a person whom is homozygous. And this homozygous individual would have a phenotype, a display of their genotype of blue eyes. So just to recap, we have an individual here. We have an individual. And this individual got a chromosome from mom, representing blue eye color. And this individual got a chromosome from dad, representing brown eye color. At this particular locus, these alleles are present. And if we follow this over, there's our gene for blue eyes, and here is our gene for brown eyes. That is the genotype here, which gives rise to a person with brown eyes, and they are going to have offspring with a person representing this genotype. Blue eyes. Two recessive traits, homozygous compared to being heterozygous. With the knowledge of their genotypes, we are now capable of doing what's called a Punnett square. And this Punnett square allows us to estimate the probability of what their offspring might look like in terms of eye color. Knowing the genotype of the parents allows us to make estimations about the genotype of their offspring. We can make projections about what their eventual phenotypes might be. And so, with this in mind, we are now capable of drawing out a Punnett square. And the way you do this is very simplistic, folks. A very nice, what we call monohybrid cross. We're going to look at one gene, monohybrid, and we're going to see what happens to the alleles in play here. So we got dad. Dad's got a big B. Dad's got a little b. He is heterozygous. He has brown eyes. We got mom. Mom has a little b and a little b. She is homozygous. She has blue eyes. So what might their offspring look like genotypically? Well, here we go. Big B comes down, little b comes over. Little b comes over, little b comes down. Big B comes down, little b comes over, little b comes over, and little b comes down. Now, what we have here is a simple monohybrid Punnett square. If they have 4 kids, this does not tell us what their 4 kids will look like. All this will allow us to do is to estimate the probabilities of what any of their kids might look like. So what might they look like? Well, here we have an individual whom is heterozygous, big B, little b, heterozygous. And this individual will have brown eyes. Here we have another heterozygous individual, big B, little b, dominant trait, masks the expression of a recessive trait. This individual has brown eyes. But here we have an individual whom is homozygous. That would be same alleles, homozygous, recessive. This individual has blue eyes. There is no dominant trait here to mask the expression of the blue-eyed traits present. Here, the dominant trait masks the recessive trait. This individual has brown eyes. Their genotype includes a blue-eyed trait, but they simply carry it. They do not express it because the dominant trait rings through. But this individual and this individual, both of which have blue eyes, display a genotype, which is homozygous recessive gene. What this allows me to say is that I estimate, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 out of 4, that's 50%. I estimate 50% of their offspring, if they had 1,000, would have brown eyes. Any of their children have a 50% chance of having brown eyes. 50% of their offspring might have blue eyes. 50% of their offspring might display a homozygous recessive genome. Their genotype displays homozygous recessive traits. That would be one from mom, one from dad. They are homozygous recessive. We can use Punnett squares to make estimations about what the genotype might be for the offspring of two individuals. And knowing what the genotype might be, we can make estimations about what their phenotype, the display of their genes, might entail. So folks, this is what a Punnett square means for us. This is how we use Punnett squares in genetics to make estimations about what individuals might appear like in terms of their phenotype, based off of their genotypes, the genes present that come from their mother and father, from those 23 pair of chromosomes, 23 pair of chromosomes representing over 25,000 different genes, and variations of genes, yet again, being called alleles. So with that in mind, thank you for watching our show here today. I hope you benefited from it. I'm Professor Hopper, and I hope you do fantastically well on your exams. Thank you.